So we can get started then. Again, thank you so much, both of you, for coming on, and Professor Clutterbuck for bringing Laurence on. I'm very excited for this chat we're going to have. I think it's going to be really great. So we have a few questions lined up. Feel free to ask us any questions that you have at any time. So we'll jump right in. The first question is for Professor Clutterbuck. So we discussed in class a lot about diversity and inclusion and the strengths that it can bring to organizations, notably sport organizations. So within your research or your experience in the industry, could you provide any firsthand examples of the impact of positively integrated diversity within the organization?
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that. And I think one of the reasons I thought Laurence might be an excellent addition to this conversation was that, I could see this conversation going in the direction of my experiences in football. And when I think about organizations, groups of people that have come together from, really interesting and different backgrounds to achieve some common goal, that's where my head tends to go is to some of those experiences that I've had in football over the years. And that's, going back to coaching and playing in various rep leagues, to my experience in university, and then most recently with some of our provincial and national teams as well. I was fortunate to have had the opportunity to coach Laurence at the last World Championships, and that's a team, our women's national team program. When I think about a group of really interesting and unique individuals working towards a common goal, that's better as a collective. That's more than just the sum of its parts. And so now, having said that, in class, we talked about, there's challenges associated with, bringing diverse groups of people together like that. And we experienced some of those challenges, right? Language barriers, notably, was one that stands out in my mind. And so, yeah, there's probably other examples. I can't say as a researcher I've studied diversity. As part of my graduate work, I did some research in terms of sport for development and organizational capacity and effectiveness in that context. One of the things that came out from organizations there that were really successful was a number of them indicated that they benefited from incorporating participants that had been through the programs into their volunteer staff and also their paid staff as well. And so it's not necessarily, that's not diversity research, but I think that lends some strength to the idea that, well, it's not just about, in that setting, providing a sport opportunity, but really listening to the folks who are being impacted and incorporating their ideas, their experiences into the program and making it that much better. So those are just a few things that come to mind right off the bat. There's probably others as well, but maybe I'll take a pause to maybe let some others jump in as well.
Yeah, thank you for that answer. I know there's definitely a lot I feel that you could unpack. So I think that was definitely a great start. I appreciate that last comment you mentioned there about taking those experiences and thoughts and opinions from those people who have been through those programs before. I was actually just conducting an interview yesterday, asking this gentleman about his advice on how to make the sports system a little bit better from his negative experiences. And that was exactly what he said, to ask and take the opinions of people that have been, whether that be negatively or positively impacted, to continue to grow and, better that organization. So I agree. I think that's important.
And I would just tack on that idea about asking questions and being inquisitive and not thinking that we have all the answers necessarily, right? And of course we don't. We all have our various blind spots that, that are based on our own experiences, sometimes in sports, sometimes in organizational settings. And so, yeah, if you're not asking questions, if you're not challenging your ideas with, groups of people that you trust and that are willing to push back against, you know, some of your ideas or opinions and those sorts of things, you're really missing out.
Yeah, I appreciate you expanding on that, because even the point before that, when you were talking about working as a collective, that really just represents allyship. And it's true. How are we going to make these changes and take actions if we just decide to just jump forward without actually educating, researching, looking at everyone's experiences to know in which way, what path to take in order to positively impact everyone? Otherwise, it's kind of like you're walking in blindly and just hoping for the best, right? But we have the tools and resources to help us create these changes and be a part of these changes. So I think that's incredibly important as well. Okay, so the next question is for Laurence. Did I say that right? I don't want to mispronounce your name, Laurence. Okay, so as a trailblazer for women in sport, specifically football, we want to first congratulate you for all of your incredible achievements on and off the field. So we would love to know more about what led into the creation of the Toronto Misfits and what are the organizational goals.
So first of all, I'd like to say that I did not create the Toronto Misfit. That organization already existed as a flag football team. But I knew a couple of players on that team, and they mentioned to me that the head coach was really interested in creating a tackle football team, the Toronto Misfits. And that's where I came in and I said, okay, I really want to do this. There's only one other women's tackle football team in Ontario. Doesn't make any sense. There's 14 million people in Ontario, and there's only one women's tackle football team. Does not make any sense to me. When you see in Saskatchewan, they have just 1 million people, and they have two really good women's tackle football team. So for me, that didn't make any sense, and I wanted to change that. And also, that other team is more focused on playing internationally. And I think that if we want to grow the game, we have to play in Canada, obviously. So that's why I kind of wanted to create that tackle team. Unfortunately, it didn't work out because it was a lot of work. And I moved back to the province of Quebec shortly after creating that team. So nobody kind of wanted to take that role of pushing to get that team rolling. So unfortunately, it didn't work out. But right now in the province of Quebec, we are working very hard with an organization called Les Reines to create a tackle league in Quebec and Ontario. There's also a team right now in Ottawa, the Capital Rebels, and there's a team in Montreal, the Montreal Blitz. And we're looking to create a league in 2022 to give the opportunity to women who would like to play tackle football on this side of the country to be able to do so.
Wow, that sounds incredible. I'm not gonna lie, when I was younger in grade school, I played football with the guys because there was very limited girls who would want to play, but I loved playing. I always pretended like I was the quarterback. And so my first and last name is Brooklyn Grove, so I would say QB to BG, BG to QB. Just make up my whole thing, my own little slogan. But I really appreciate the effort that you're putting into this, because actually Madeline and I had an interactive session the other night about unconscious bias, and I feel like as soon as you hear the word football, your mind immediately goes to men, because that's all we've been open to. That's all that's really happened. So I think the fact that you're really trying to push this is truly important, and I think we'll get a lot of interest for sure. I mean, I would love to learn more about football in general. So I think having that space to kind of resonate with who will be playing will help that, and probably attract even more people, because they can look at these individuals and say, this could be me, instead of always looking at the same teams and the same individuals in the NFL, let's say, as an example. So I think what you're doing is absolutely incredible, and really making these changes. And I understand it's probably so much effort, as you were saying, I couldn't even imagine. But you're still here developing the game for women, and I think that's truly important. So thank you for that. You are truly making these changes that need to happen.
No, thank you. I mean, there's right now what you just said. There is Ontario Football who put together a series of webinars for women's football. So look it up if you want to know more about football. They'll definitely be able to help. And I think there's a lot of CFL players that are going to be doing those webinars. So
awesome.
You should definitely look it up.
I will, for sure. Thank you.
And Brooklyn, just to jump in, I mean, you'd be forgiven as somebody that I think I have this right. You grew up in Ontario. That's right.
Yeah.
There have not historically been a whole lot of opportunities for women and girls in our province, right? Some flag football, there's a little bit, the high school program is more well developed, but then all of a sudden there's nothing else, right? And so around the country, that's not always the case, right? So Laurence talked about some programs that have been operating in Quebec. There's a well-established group in Saskatchewan, especially with the Saskatoon Valkyries and the Regina Riot, that for those that are, interested in learning more about, well, yeah, what does women's football look like? Those are just some quick, easy Google terms that, absolutely, there's a wonderful world of, interesting players and coaches and folks from different backgrounds that are playing tackle football. And yes, it's tackle football, and yes, it's Canadian rules, unless we go to international competitions, in which case we always tend to revert back to the American rules. But yes, it is football. Yes, it's tackle football, and it's quite good.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I'm definitely going to look into that. I mean, I'm okay with tackling. I was saying I was the QB, but I was all over the field. I would do all the stuff. So I'm ready to learn more about that. So that'll be great. Thank you.
Brooklyn, I didn't know you were a big football player here.
I know. I was actually low-key the star, but I'll just keep that.
And you know what? I really appreciate kind of what you were saying, because I have never been the biggest football fan or, into the sport so much, but also I feel, oops, my screen just went blank. Sorry about that. But I feel that's also partly due to it being such a men's thing, and there's only men's sport. I can't see women out there on the field playing. I know there are opportunities, but it's, you have to actively look for it. It's not just in your face like men's football. So I will definitely be looking into those opportunities. Brooklyn, you can teach me how to play some football. But I think it's really important because I'm sure the demand is there. And as you said, Laurence, you have to put in the work to it. And not a lot of people still are believing in, putting in the effort into women's sports. So I appreciate that you're going full throttle with that. Brooklyn, I don't know if it's just me, but I can't hear you.
I kind of have a feeling it's on your side. Okay, no, it was her.
Don't blame me. This one's not my fault.
Not you, Ryan.
You're still on mute right now, Brooklyn.
Can everyone hear and see me?
Yes.
Okay. All right, I've been having difficulties with my computer all morning, and it's been pretty stressful, but I'm back. Okay, awesome. What I had originally said was, Madeline, I will teach you how to throw a great spiral to pass it down the field. But moving on from that, Laurence, we have another question for you. So we read your quote, and I'm going to read it directly so I don't miss any words, but it said, I want girls to join football teams as easily as they join a soccer team, and I want to see women's football in top 10 TSN plays of the week because women can play ball. So Madeline and I really resonated with this and absolutely love this quote. So do you mind elaborating on a process or how you're working towards this goal? Perhaps even how we can get involved and help, whether that may be students, leaders, or even organizations as a whole.
Yeah, I think the first step is creating awareness, and that's with the CFL. That's what we're trying to do right now, just to promote women's football as much as possible. Every time we can tweet about something that is talking about women, we will. And yeah, I definitely think that that's the number one thing, is just to create awareness, let people know that women play football in Canada and across the world. I think that's very important, because I still hear now in 2021 people saying, what, you play football, like tackle football? Or I would also get the question, oh, so you play lingerie football? I'm like, no, not that type of football, like the real tackle football. So creating awareness is the number one thing. And as I mentioned earlier, on a more personal side, trying to build that league that is going to I want to say make the women in Quebec and Ontario be able to play tackle football. That's the one thing. And then maybe in 4 or 5 years, we want to also create a junior football, women's junior girls league, because to grow the game, you have to start really from the grassroots. And just having a senior league is not gonna make it. Some province I've also made a lot of progress in that already. In Saskatchewan, Alberta, they do have junior leagues, so we're definitely working towards that. And also, we want to help on the officiating side of it, where we would have a lot of women officials involved in that league. It would be kind of mandatory to have women officials officiating our games.
Awesome, thank you for that explanation. I would say I would love to see women's football on top, like the 10 TSN top plays. Like that would be so exciting because it's something that you don't see often. I feel like it would grab so much attention, kind of influence women all around the world. So I think that's a really great thing that you're doing, and I love that you're not avoiding the grassroots, because that is the key part to develop your organization. Especially because you don't have small goals that can be done in a week or two. You have great goals, huge goals that will take time and some effort, and definitely need that awareness to get everyone involved. So thank you so much for that explanation. We are here to support, and I'm looking forward to seeing this in the future.
Yeah, I want to say that women do make winning catches and can hit pretty hard too. So we can definitely make the TSN top 10 for sure.
Sure. I love that. But you know what's funny is that when women do that, it's almost like people are taken back and surprised at that, that we can do that. So it's so wonderful to see, but now we got to try to get that surprise reaction away and just get that support.
And just so you know, Laurence, I show some of those one-handed catches of yours in my classes. So the word is getting around Brock University. I'm sure there are some people perhaps watching or listening to this that have, I've heard that name before. That's who that is. Maybe one other thing for the Brock University and folks that might be watching this too is, so there's so many different avenues in terms of thinking about how to develop the women's game. And so the senior tackle, as Laurence was saying, that's one aspect, right? Opportunities for young girls is another area. And then I think there's also some really interesting developments happening in terms of flag football. And you can see a number of Ontario universities getting on board, some more than others, with a league dedicated to university-aged players. Obviously, as was the case with everything this year, it's been put on hold, right, as we try to get back to some sense of normalcy. But be really interesting to see how that league develops when we do get back to normal. And I did notice that Brock University is not yet represented. I know that Brock University is undefeated since 1964 in football, and so I would invite some interested parties to maybe consider putting that record on the line in the future with that league, perhaps.
And to add to that, in the province of Quebec, they're also working very hard to have a women's flag football league at the university level. Probably not for 2021, but they're aiming for 2022. So maybe eventually Quebec and Ontario can play against each other, and then it can grow out in the entire country and become a youth sport.
Yeah, I think that would be incredible. And I feel like the more opportunities that we can get to actually play the sport or hear about our friends playing the sport, the more we'd want to learn about it and, watch it on TV, and it just kind of snowballs from there. So I believe those opportunities would be so great. And even for me, wanting to try it out when things get back to normal. But yeah, I agree with everything that was said there. Now, Professor Clutterbuck, I kind of want to hear from you with your experience coaching women's football. Have you seen a lot of positive impacts recently for women in football, and what kind of growth do you anticipate in the future?
Well, in terms of positive impacts, I think anybody people that are in sport management will have no doubt had similar experiences where they've been involved in sport and they've loved it. And that's not everybody's experience, but for the most part, that tends to be our experience, right? We love sport, we're passionate about it. And so in terms of the impacts, just the fact that there needs to be more opportunities, there needs to be more pathways for women and girls to enter the sport. And some of those pathways exist in other provinces. And so I think Ontario is getting better. I'm anxious to see when we get sort of back to normal, to use, go back to that phrase again, that the momentum keeps going, right? I think there are a lot of exciting things that are happening. But as Laurence was saying, earlier in the conversation, developing football is so hard, right? This is not 3-on-3 basketball where if we get, 5 or 6 people together, we can have a game, right? It takes structure, it takes organization, it takes resources, especially on the tackle side, right? This is a sport that traditionally the teams, the high schools will provide equipment and field space and so many other things. And so to get probably 35 or 40 women or girls at the younger age groups together, well, now you have one team, right? And so you need another 35, you need another 40 to have a second team. And if you have, we just start doing the math, right? If you have 80 players and you have 2 teams, well, we're still not at a league yet, right? So this is a challenge to get to, those hundreds of players that you would see in any of the community sport organizations around the province, right? So it is a challenge to get there. In terms of not being so negative, where there's opportunities, we talked about the flag league. I think that's very, very exciting. We've seen, I would like to see in our province more opportunity to compete at the national and the international levels. So prior to, I'll give you a little bit of history, prior to COVID and everything that's gone on, the PSO for football in Ontario had made I don't want to say strong commitment, but they'd indicated that they wanted to participate at the next national tournament. And that's a big deal for a province that really hadn't been involved before. And so things were put in place, right? Coaches were starting to be selected, players were being identified. And of course, in the last year, everything's been on hold. And so I hope when we come out of it that some of that momentum continues, because I think there is an opportunity to accelerate some of the growth that we've already seen. But it might not happen, right? There's a way that not everybody's going to come out of COVID better for having gone through this, right? Some people will have left the sport. Some people might not be as, inclined to volunteer and do some other things. And so we need to make sure that when we do come out of this, that we're pushing as hard as we were when we had to go into lockdown initially, right? There were so many things that were good that were happening that we need to get back on track as quickly as we can.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate that you brought up that things might probably be different when we come out of COVID, when we go back to normal. I often forget that there won't really be going back to 100% normal, and especially in the sports and activities, recreation kind of side, a lot of people still may not feel comfortable joining in group activities and that kind of thing. So I feel like that's definitely a factor when trying to build up these programs or continue on with the momentum. So definitely an interesting point that you brought up there.
Yeah, and depending on the day, I seem to go back and forth on this, right? There's the pessimistic version, which is like, well, are we going to be able to get back to where we were? And then there's the optimistic, which is, well, yes, when we come out of this, people are really going to be craving those interactions, those opportunities to be part of a team and to work together. And so I hope that that's what happens. That's what I'm working towards.
Yeah, that kind of brings me back to our conversation that Brooklyn and I had with Professor, oh my goodness. Brooklyn, do you know who I'm talking about? Professor Hyatt. I apologize. I haven't had class with him in so long, I forgot his name. And we were asking him about his kind of predictions for after COVID, and he said something interesting, that he thinks there would be an equal balance of those who don't feel comfortable going out and are going to kind of stay inside, and then on the other hand, of those who are so eager to get back out. And that, I mean, he predicts it would be an equal balance, and so we'd kind of stay at that equilibrium. But it would be interesting to see what people's opinions are like. I know I, for one, am on the end where I just need to get out and do something and be active and keep busy. But yeah.
And I agree. I do think it's going to get better, but I think we have to. Oh, sorry. Am I on?
Yes, you're still on.
Sorry about that. I was just going to add to that. I do think it is going to get better, but I think it's important that we're not complacent, right? Or that we think that it can't, that it's just going to go back to normal. It's going to take from the provinces, from the national organizations, resources, right? Time, money, so many other things to get back to where we were. And so, yeah, let's not be complacent, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Brooklyn was just having some audio issues, so hopefully it's back now. But yes, I agree. There's definitely going to have to be, people are going to have to put in the work and figure out what's the best way to kind of attack that.
Madeline, if you don't mind, I can hop in for Brooklyn here.
Go for it.
Okay, awesome. Hi, Professor Clutterbuck and Laurence. Nice to see you. I just have a quick question. We've been talking a lot about the grassroots level and women and girls in football as participants and the issues around that. But kind of going off that last point you made, Professor Clutterbuck, about the resources, time, and everything that's needed to properly grow the game, I kind of want to look at another problem in football, and that's women in leadership positions and the lack of. So I think that, with Professor Clutterbuck, you as the head coach of the national team, and Laurence, you as a women leader in the CFL and in football in general, I feel like this is something that you can both speak to and maybe tell us about your experiences in how we can grow the game and get more women in leadership positions in football, and how we can do that as a collective, and how you personally have been working on that.
I can explain to you how I got involved in the CFL. In 2018, I was invited to the NFL Women's Career in Football Forum, and I knew that the CFL was going to be there and that they were looking to possibly hire women in their football operations department. So I went there and really did everything I could to kind of stand out and ask a lot of questions and talk to the right people to make sure they noticed me. So I think they did like what they saw. 2 weeks later, they invited me to the regional combine just to help out. And at that moment, Ryan Jensen, who's currently the Associate Vice President of Football Operation at the CFL, he told me about the job opportunity, so I applied and I got the job. So I think that the CFL saw that there was an issue, that they needed a woman in their football operations department, because we have so many different perspectives than men. Like we function differently, and I mean, not necessarily everybody function differently, but we bring different perspectives, and I think it's really important in any aspect of life to have both genders always represented. So basically that's why I got involved. And I mean, what we have to do is just to create opportunities and just being out there. Again, what I said earlier about being visible and creating awareness, just making sure younger girls and women know that it is now possible to get to that level is one step further, because they can work towards that goal, get experience in certain specific areas to get into those specific roles that they want to attain.
Yeah, and I'll jump in, Sully. I think it's a great question. It's an important topic, and it's like so many of the other things that we've been talking about today. It's a really challenging issue in the sense that there's no one thing that any one person can do or should do that's going to make the representation what it could or should be. Now, having said that, I do think it's getting better, and I think in the next few years you're going to see the women in leadership positions in our sport accelerate even more. So, and I mean, I've seen this from a personal standpoint. Just 2 weeks ago, I was part of a coaches workshop where we had 18 women coaches from across Canada completing their highest level of certification through the National Coaches Certification Program. Those are the Comp Dev modules. And so that's outstanding, right? Those are 18 women that are now certified through NCCP to get out there and coach at provincial and national levels, which is outstanding. Now, that's not the only issue that needs to be addressed. I know Laurence is doing, a lot of work in terms of officiating and player development. We've talked about a lot today. I think the other thing you're going to see, just based on my own experience, is there are so many candidates for some of these leadership positions that you're talking about that are part of the national team program that I was a part of. Players like Laurence, who still identifies as an athlete, as a player, right? Hopefully for, at least a couple more years, I'm not in a hurry for you to not be a player, Laurence. I want to see you out on the field.
I'm not getting younger.
But I mean, Laurence is she's the type of person that not only is she a leader in sport right now, but she's exactly the type of person, and there are so many other women from that program that would be outstanding candidates to lead, whether it's provincial organizations, if they want to stay on, on the sport management side. They're going to be outstanding coaches if they decide to transition into more of a coaching pathway. And I think you will see that. And I think our national team program will be better for it when that happens and as that process accelerates. And so, has it been slow? Yes. It's been too slow? Yes. But I think it will get better, and rather quickly. If I had to say, in the next 5 or 10 years, I think we'll be having a different conversation.
Thank you. Great answers, and I hope for that to be true as well. It seems, as you kind of mentioned too, that the support systems in the past couple of years have been put into place and accelerated in that. So it's good to see change starting to happen and more rapidly as we go as well.
Can you hear me? Good? Okay. I don't know what is going on. I'm so sorry. I know that's kind of annoying and disrupts the conversation. But yeah, I was just going to say the exact same thing. You took the words right out of my mouth. The rate is not exponential, but it is happening. And I do think changes will happen in the near future, but it's also how we take it. Are we going to sit back and let these rates just decrease or not accelerate the way they should be? Or are we going to take this to positively impact the future generations, but also the leaders that are here right now that might not see themselves as leaders because of the lack of representation? So I think that's truly important. So thank you so much for bringing that up.
I'll kind of echo on a little bit of Sully's question and what he said. I definitely kind of stole my question there. That's okay though, Sully, thank you for that. But we kind of wanted to talk about specifically how we read somewhere, Laurence, that you were the CFL's first full-time female football operations hire, which is, amazing to see that you are in this role and doing amazing things there with your vast experience. But how do you feel that, you were the first female operations in this day and age, and, the first female hire there? I don't know, to me, it's just so crazy when I read that you were the first female, it's just crazy to me. So how did you feel, and how did you take that? And I guess, do you feel like pressure on you being that first female?
To answer that question, if I feel pressure, I put a lot of pressure on myself, not being a female, just in general. I'm an athlete, so I have a background where I try to be the best athlete I can. Like, I really have a mindset where when I was training hard to be on the national team, I wanted to be the best wide receiver in the world, and I put the work ethic into that. So it's a little bit the same at the CFL, right? I want to be the best as I can as possible. And it's not really related to being a female or not. It's just me, the pressure that I put on myself. And I think that's how everybody should approach their job or whatever they're doing or they love doing. But yeah, no, like I mentioned earlier, I knew that I would become the first full-time female in football operations when I applied for the job. And I thought that, yeah, it's about time. And if I can show my friends, my teammates, everybody around me that, hey, if you're as passionate as football as I am, you can work in football. It is an option for you. So yeah, that's what I got from knowing that I was the first female in football operation at the CFL.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that, and I completely agree. I think people need to see people in those leadership positions to show that, you know, they are attainable and you can do that if you put in the work, you have that passion, and if that's what you want to do. So I appreciate seeing you and excelling in this position, and hopefully it snowballs into younger women who have this passion for football, looking up to you and knowing that they could do that one day as well.
Yeah, just to jump in here, athlete mindset, different level. It's great. I mean, I'm a very competitive person for sure, so I understand what you're saying. But I love that you're taking your drive and your passion, even as an athlete with the sport you love, into the position you're doing to positively impact your organization and go beyond that. So we really admire that, I must say myself. So just another last question for you, Laurence. We read that the CFL partnered with She Is to support women in sport to celebrate many girls and women, players, fans, employees, media personnel, and others who just love and work in football. So firstly, that is absolutely amazing. We love to see that support and care. So we would love to hear the process of partnering with this organization. But we're also wondering if there are any upcoming events that you're collaborating on or anyone can get involved with.
Well, first of all, I'd like to say that it's more of a marketing approach than a football ops approach. So I don't know how that process kind of got started. But what I know is that they announced the partnership on March 8th in 2029. And they also announced that there was a challenge where every time you would complete a workout, a certain amount of money would be put towards partners of the She Is organization to help girls and women in different sports. So that was the partnership that happened in 2019. And then unfortunately with 2020, nothing happened. The CFL was kind of on hold. And for 2021, our main focus is the return to play plan. We are planning on having our diversity is strength campaign back again. We're currently working on that, but it's so important to have a professional league being involved in those types of organizations and promoting women in sport. And we try to do our best to partner with what She Is, and the Diversity is Strength campaign was also very strong. I think it started in 2017. So I hope we can get the same kind of traction in 2021 that we got in 2017.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, we were talking about spreading awareness, and I think marketing is just one tool that we can use to do just that. So I think that's really important. Unfortunately, I know everything's still questionable right now, and we're really just trying to get back into normalcy a little bit, just kind of get that schedule going again. So I'm looking forward to seeing this take off. And it's actually really interesting that you do a workout and some the proceeds will go to that organization. But because I've heard one of my friends plays soccer, so it was like every goal they got or something like that. So I've never heard of that. So that's actually really interesting. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I'm looking forward to this.
Absolutely. I think it's really great to hear about these partnerships. And again, you know, things because of this past year have been a little bit slow. But I'm glad to hear that, you know, working towards continuing that partnership and keeping that ongoing, because that's definitely a very important part about sport and growing this sport. And as Brooklyn said, marketing, that's just one step to help it grow, you know, just seeing that, being able to scroll through whatever social media. So that diversity there, excuse me, is very important. So that was our last question that we had for you two. Definitely such a great, valuable conversation. I personally learned a lot from that. So thank you so much for coming on to chat with us, both of you. And unless you have any questions for us, that's all we have for you today. We don't want to take up too much of your time.
I just want to say that if there's any Brock student, men or women, that are willing to get involved in women's tackle football or even flag football, please reach out to either me or Professor Clutterbuck. We'll be happy to kind of redirect you to or direct you in the right direction. We need help. We need definitely human resources. So please feel free to reach out.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would just add internships, 3P99s, 4P99s. I think, you know, those are terms that'll be familiar to the Brock students, that there's so many different ways to become involved, as well as volunteering, participating. Perhaps, Brooklyn, you mentioned you could throw a spiral. So you might have to get out there. Good luck covering Laurence if you are out there. But yeah, the last thing I would like to say is just thank you for setting up this conversation. Any opportunity to talk about women's football in our country is a real pleasure, and just so happy to have contributed in some small way to some of the great things that you're doing with SHEMA. So thank you for having us.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. I mean, I gotta let my knee rest still healing, and then I'll look into the football side and I'll practice my spiral. Maybe Laurence and I can be on the same team. And I can just.
I love that. Let's go.
There you go.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. It was great to see you, Professor Clutterbuck, again, and it was so nice meeting Laurence as well. Truly loved everything we talked about. I'm sure we could ask so many more questions, but we appreciate your responses now, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the day today.
Thank you.
All right. Stay safe, everybody. See you soon.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.